No one wakes up imagining that their life will be divided into two parts, before and after the war, before the body changed, before the permanent pain, before the absence. For those who lost part of their body in a conflict, war is not a distant event. It is present in the mirror, in the effort to walk, in the difficulty of holding a simple object. Civilians and soldiers share the same reality. Surviving does not mean returning to who you were. This video does not show battles. It shows what remains of them, because when the shots cease, the body continues to remember. War is usually remembered by dates, maps, and political decisions, but for millions of people, it is remembered differently, in the body, in the absence, in the permanent change of one's own identity. For those who lost part of their body in a conflict, war does not end when silence arrives. It continues every day. It continues in the effort to get out of bed, in the forced learning to live in a completely different way, in the reconstruction of a life that will never be the same again. These people are not numbers. They are civilians and military personnel, men and women, young and old, people who are on the battlefield, but also people who are at home, going to work, taking care of their families, living an ordinary day that was interrupted forever. The loss of an arm, a leg, vision, or mobility is not merely physical. It changes the way the world is perceived. It changes relationships, dreams, plans, and even the way someone sees themselves in the mirror. Before continuing, subscribe to the channel to support this type of content and allow these stories to continue being told. Surviving does not mean returning to normal. It means learning to exist in a new reality imposed by war. This video does not speak of military strategies, nor of winners or losers. It speaks of the human cost that remains when everything ends, a silent, constant, and often forgotten cost. Imagine waking up one day and realizing that your body no longer responds as before. That the arm that was always there, that held your children, that wrote, that worked, simply no longer exists. Or that the legs that took you anywhere, that ran, that danced, that gave you freedom, have been replaced by absence and pain. This is the reality of millions of people around the world, people who did not choose to be in a war but were reached by it anyway. Because war does not distinguish, it does not ask if you are a soldier or a civilian, if you are armed or defenseless, if you deserve that fate or not. It just happens, and when it happens, it leaves marks that time never erases. The first time someone looks at their own body after an amputation is a moment impossible to describe in words. It is a shock that goes beyond the physical. It is the loss of a part of one's own identity. It is looking in the mirror and not completely recognizing the person who is there. It is feeling pain in a limb that no longer exists, a real and cruel phenomenon called phantom pain, where the brain still sends signals to a part of the body that has been torn away. It is as if the body refuses to accept the new reality, fighting against a truth it never asked to live. But the physical pain, however intense, is only one layer of suffering. There is emotional pain, psychological pain, social pain. There is the look of people on the street, which is sometimes pity, sometimes discomfort, rarely naturalness. There is the need to relearn everything. Simple things that were once automatic now require effort, concentration, adaptation. Holding a glass, tying a shoe, taking a shower, getting dressed, cooking, working. Every daily action transforms into a challenge, into a constant reminder that life has changed forever. And then there are the relationships, families that need to completely reorganize, spouses who become caregivers, children who need to understand why their father or mother can no longer play the same way, parents who see their young children return from war with bodies they barely recognize, friendships that drift away not out of malice, but because people do not know how to act, what to say, how to help. Social isolation is real. Often, those who lose a limb as a result of war also lose part of their social life, their connections, their place in the world. The job market becomes an almost insurmountable barrier. Professions that depended on an intact body are now impossible. Career dreams crumble. Financial independence becomes a daily struggle. Even with prosthetics, even with rehabilitation, even with all the willpower in the world, there are real limitations that cannot be ignored, and society often is not prepared to include these people genuinely. There is poor accessibility, There is veiled prejudice. There is the false idea that sympathy replaces real opportunities. Modern prosthetics are true marvels of engineering. There is advanced technology, light and resistant materials, mechanisms that mimic natural movements with impressive precision. But a prosthetic, no matter how sophisticated, will never be the original limb. It does not feel. It does not have the same response. It does not integrate with the body in the same way. It is a tool, not a replacement. And the adaptation process is long, painful, frustrating. Hours of physical therapy, days of pain, weeks of small advances that seem insignificant but are monumental for those who achieve them. There are also those who do not have access to prosthetics, those who live in countries devastated by war, where resources are scarce, where survival itself is already a miracle. For these people, the loss of a limb means an even more difficult life, an even greater exclusion, a daily struggle just to exist. They improvise with precarious crutches, with broken wheelchairs, with the help of family members who are also struggling to survive. War does not only take their bodies, it takes their opportunities, their dignity, their hope. And then there is the psychological trauma, the post-traumatic stress disorder that haunts many survivors, the memories of the explosion, of the exact moment when life changed, of the images that the brain cannot erase, the nightmares, the anxiety, the deep depression that comes with the loss of autonomy, of purpose, of identity. Many struggle in silence without adequate psychological support, without space to process what they have lived through. Mental health is often neglected, as if focusing on the physical body were enough, as if fixing the exterior resolved the shattered interior. Children who lose limbs in conflicts carry an even crueler burden. They will grow up with this absence. Their bodies will develop around this loss. They will face school, adolescence, adult life with a difference that will never disappear. They will have to explain repeatedly what happened. They will have to deal with bullying, with exclusion, with the difficulty of fitting into a world that values whole and functional bodies. And yet, many of these children demonstrate incredible resilience, an adaptive capacity that surprises and inspires. War veterans carry a complex feeling. Many enlisted out of duty, out of patriotism, out of economic necessity. They were trained to fight, but they were not prepared to lose parts of themselves. When they return home, gratitude, recognition, honor are expected. But what many find is indifference, bureaucracy, insufficient support systems. They gave their bodies for a cause, and the cause moves forward while they are left behind, trying to rebuild lives that were shattered. Civilians who never asked to be in a war live an even greater injustice. They chose nothing. They were simply living, existing when war arrived. A bomb in a market, a stray projectile, a landmine hidden in a path that had always been safe. Their lives were stolen without reason, without logic, without any possibility of preparation. And then they must live with the absence, with the question that will never have an answer. Why? There are stories of overcoming, of course. People who, against all odds, find ways to live with fullness. Paralympic athletes who inspire the world, professionals who reinvent their careers, fathers and mothers who raise their children with love and dedication, even with physical limitations, artists who transform their pain into creation. These stories are important, they are necessary, they are luminous, but they do not erase the reality of pain. They do not make the loss less real. They do not mean that the suffering was valid or necessary. Society needs to understand that war does not end with peace treaties. It continues in rehabilitation hospitals, in physical therapy clinics, in endless appointments, in sleepless nights, in hidden tears, in the daily struggle to maintain dignity in a world that often does not know how to deal with difference. Each person who loses a limb in a conflict is a permanent reminder that war is not glorious. It is brutal. It is destructive. It is irreversible. And when the news stops talking about a particular conflict, when the world moves on to the next headline, these people are still there. They continue waking up every day to face a reality they never chose. They continue fighting invisible battles that no one else cares to see. They continue existing in a limbo between what they were and what they were forced to become. The war may end for the world, but for them, it is eternal. That is why this video exists. to remember, to not let these stories be forgotten, so that when we think of war, we think not only of maps and strategies, but of real bodies, real lives, real pain, so that every decision that leads to a conflict is made with full awareness that there will be people, millions of them, who will carry the consequences forever. People who deserve to live without pain, without absence, without the permanent mark of a violence they should never have experienced. War is a choice, but its victims choose nothing. They only survive. And surviving, in this context, is the most courageous act anyone can perform. If this content touched you in any way, leave your subscription to the channel, because these stories need to be told, these people need to be remembered, and the human cost of war can never be forgotten.